And we are live, 2021 TD Live Fantasy Draft. We're going to be here doing a Yahoo League draft today. Let's get it going. Let's see what they got for us. Let's see the full experience here, Dan.
We got the 10-team snake draft today, and we'll be picking 4th overall.
4th pick, baby, 4th team. Well, a little bit interesting there when we come look at our board. The discussion was between Kamara and Zeke at the 4th pick. They're expecting CMC and Dalvin Cook to be off the board in the first 2 and see who falls at 4. So I'll give it to Andy coming through for us, Dan. What do you think here?
It's tough. On my official rankings, I did have Saquon Barkley as the 4th overall originally. However, with his knee being in question, we haven't seen him so far in the preseason. We may see him this weekend, but it is a bit of a risk for a top 4 pick in comparison to the 2 guys that were mentioned there in the video. So we'll see how it unfolds here with the top 3 picks. We have
10 seconds. 10 seconds remaining. 10 seconds.
And we got a few people in this league that have a lot of experience playing fantasy football.
Thousands of people.
It will be interesting to see how this draft unfolds.
I'll take you through the board over here on the right. You will see who's coming off the board.
Christian McCaffrey goes number 1 overall. Dalvin Cook goes 2.
We do have our ranks. We have grouped these in buckets. Not
Derrick Henry goes 3.
Or our specific ranks here. With 50 seconds on the clock, it comes down to pick of the litter. I didn't want Henry, so that's good. So between Kamara and Zeke.
I do like Zeke a lot in that offense.
I think we're going to be leaning Zeke based off of.
I think Winston is more of a downfield thrower as well. I think Zeke's going to get a lot of checkdowns when you have the 3 wide receiver sets of Gallup, Lamb, and Cooper moving the ball consistently down the field to open up those running lanes and those screen plays.
Gonna sit here, use up a little bit more of our time here, confirm the pick. Ezekiel Elliott is the pick. We got a little news on him. Restructured contract doesn't faze me. Zeke has been taken as the 1st overall selection by TD Live.
You get a big year from Zeke, baby.
Dr. Beefcake up on the board here. He has over 4,000 games of fantasy experience on Yahoo. Very interesting. I wouldn't be shocked here for him to go Kelsey. Seems a little bit out of the box. Crazy. Playing that much fantasy football, I think he's lost his screw.
I think you have to have a couple screws loose if you're playing with about 20 teams every year.
I'll give him credit because that's commitment, but my goodness, it's a little over the top for me.
Well, at that point, unless you have all the same players, you're rooting against yourself somewhere every weekend. So how does that even become fun anymore? You usually like to have just a couple of teams, maybe a handful at the most, and that way you can root for your guys and not really have to think, well, I was rooting for him in this league, then I'm against him in this league, and I ended up losing this league where I had him, and then he kicked my butt.
Kelsey off the board at 7. We like to see that. So the TD Live draft strategy today, our first 2 picks are going to be running backs. We're going to be taking a look at the quarterback position in round 3 and then continue to hammer running backs.
Nick Chubb off the board.
Any one of these positions here coming off as a wide receiver,
Devonta Adams,
Tyreek Hill, those are good picks for us. We're happy with those selections.
And Adams, as we said, off the board. I would expect Tyreek Hill to go relatively soon here, as we've seen him going in mocks. Like we said, we do not value the wide receiver position this early. Lots of good talent out there. We want to get our running backs
in this passing league.
Well, if you have 2 to 3 wide receivers capable of production each week, You hope to find a hole, and there goes Hill. And wouldn't be surprised to see him take Mahomes to go with him.
So we'd like to see Diggs
And he
right
goes
there.
back-to-back wideouts.
If we can get one or two more wideouts or like a Mahomes here, that would lock us into a Harris, Mixon, or Barkley type guy, which is the goal here. If we could get Barkley round 2, that's a steal. Yeah, there
Barkley
goes
off the
Barkley
board.
at 13.
And we're looking at Mixon and Najee Harris here.
Personally, I think I'd probably be leaning Harris myself. But when we get to that pick, we'll talk about it. We'll see what's available.
Hopefully one of the two.
Ryan's red team up. What we've seen here is only quarterbacks and running backs at this point, with the exception of Travis Kelce.
Wide receivers, yeah.
Well, Ryan's red team had taken Kelce. They come back with Eckler. Austin Eckler. 3 to go. We have 2 on the board here that we'd like to get. Preferably here, if Mixon or Harris could fall to us, that would be ideal. I'd love to see Beefcake come with Mahomes.
And I do like Gibson and Carson after Mixon and Harris. Not sure how Tom feels, but I think that Gibson and Carson are both going to get the majority of the looks on their respective teams this year.
So again, as we built this board, we built in groupings here, thinking more for rounds to see all of the players, not necessarily our rankings of those players. Each pick will be up for discussion for the names that are available.
Yeah, and on my list, I had Zeke as a number 2 overall player, projected 1,300 rush yards, 500 receiving yards, 14 touchdowns, and 60 catches. I had him as the second most. Calvin Ridley off the board. We're getting either Mixon or Harris.
That locks us in to Mixon or Harris, and I couldn't be more excited, baby.
Neither could I.
Couldn't be more excited.
Very happy with this, the way that this is turning out. Lots of receivers off the board early.
Before one's taken here, Dan, would you rather have Mixon or Harris?
I'd probably go with Harris, but I don't think you can go wrong with either back. I think both guys are going to be the clear number 1s on their respective teams. Both have relatively explosive passing games to go in that offense, so they will get plenty of red zone opportunities. I think Mixon will see a big increase in his receiving game, but Harris, we saw with a 40-yard receiving play from Ben Roethlisberger this past week. Obviously, they didn't play him yesterday. They've seen enough from Najee. He is the number 1 back there in Pittsburgh, and what I think is going to be a very good contender this season. So I would probably lean Harris slightly. And with Hopkins off the board, we have our pick of the litter here. Harris is projected for slightly more.
The thought process here is going to this round 3 selection, where if Mixon falls, that's where the strategy becomes a little bit more challenging. Najee Harris has welcomed to the TD Live team by Dan and Tom. Let's give him a round of ovation.
He's going to be a very productive player in that offense. Right now, we're looking at possibly Lamar Jackson, Joe Mixon, Chris Carson.
Joe Mixon off the board at 19 makes me feel a little bit better. I would have loved to have him in the conversation here at 24. But coming into this draft, the plan at 24 was Lamar Jackson as our number 1 overall quarterback on the board.
And the only other guy that I'd be considering here would be Chris Carson. But we do believe that the strategy is better going with Lamar Jackson. And A.J. Brown, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, both off the board.
So to give a little feedback to that, in this league, rushing touchdowns are 6, passing touchdowns are 4. So the rushing does come into play here and skews the numbers quite a lot.
And as we saw last year, I believe there were 7 backs with over 1,000 yards in the entire NFL, and Lamar Jackson was one of them. So you're getting the running back side of things, his ability to rush the ball, and then you add in the passing. It's a dual threat quarterback there, and he could be back to the MVP level he was at 2 years ago. Obviously played extremely well last year, but missed a couple of games.
They did do a lot in the receiving game to bring him in some weapons with Bateman, with Wallace. Coming in through the free agency side of things. So I do think that just trying to spread the field will give him a little bit more room here. But DK Metcalf and Darren Waller, I'm thinking this round has been awful by our competitors, in my personal opinion. Having Metcalf and Brown both go above Justin Jefferson is a shock to me. I'm going to go ahead with our next pick here at 37. I don't want to risk not getting Lamar, so we're going to lock in Lamar here. We could potentially wait and have him fall to us, but that'll be some nervous picks. And to be perfectly honest, as we move forward throughout the year, Lamar will fit beautifully into our lineup each and every week. I know some people are sitting there scratching their head saying, but Pat Mahomes, those TDs, very TD dependent, where they're only worth 4. 2 rushing touchdowns is 3 passing touchdowns. 1,000 rush yards is 2,500 pass yards. In this league, it's skewing the numbers.
And I think Lamar's ability to rush the ball, as you said, and get rushing TDs has so much added value that even if we reach on him a little bit compared to the guys on the board this season, it makes sense. In such a pass-happy league, we do think that we're going to come away with a lot of talent at that position. And when 37 rolls around, we're going to be hoping that another couple quarterbacks come off the board because we set the standard with it. And then hopefully we can get a Gaskin, a Carson, a James Robinson, a Miles Sanders, Josh Jacobs, David Montgomery.
We have also discussed the thought of cornering the market if Kyler Murray is still there at 37. It's not necessarily plan A, but it has been in our conversations where we take both of them out of play for the rest of the league and play a little defense here. We get the best matchup on a week-to-week basis from the 2 best scrambling quarterbacks in the NFL. I'm
thinking that he'll be off the board by 37, but we have discussed that, and we've kind of come to the conclusion that it might be a little smarter, say, around 14 or 15, coming back around with the Justin Fields or Deshaun Watson, or, say, in around 8 or something like that, going with Tom Brady.
Dr. Beefcake. I always like to see what Beefcake's doing with somebody with this much fantasy experience.
Well, I was laughing because I saw he left the draft. There goes Mahomes. I saw he left the draft and then he joined the draft. So I was thinking he had to go into his other draft, make sure he got that pick right, then hop back over into this draft. I'm pretty sure Beefcake is in too many leagues to really pay attention to all of them at once.
Beefcake looking at Mahomes, Ridley, and Jones.
Underwhelming job by Beefcake, in my opinion, thus far.
TD Live sitting here with Lamar Jackson, Ezekiel, and Najee Harris. And at the end of the year, I would expect all 3 of these to have 1,000 rush yards, which is big-time stuff.
Absolutely, and that's why at 37, if we can go with another 1,000-yard rushing back, like I said, there were only 7 in the NFL the entire season last year. Obviously, with an additional game, that might increase, but Josh Jacobs and James Robinson were 2 of those guys. And then Chris Carson, fully healthy, should hit that mark this season. David Montgomery hit the 1,000-yard mark. You got J.K. Dobbins.
Ideally, I would be looking at Miles Sanders, Josh Jacobs, and Myles Gaskin as 2 of our next 3 picks. Potentially, Mike Davis could work his way into that scenario, depending on what's left on the board.
James Robinson and J.K. Dobbins off the board. I'm expecting to see Murray go relatively soon here, but let's hope that one of these guys falls
still on the board. Especially seeing some of these wide receivers, and Darren Waller to me was the shock here. Darren Waller at 22 going to who knows? Whew. Chris Carson,
who is a sleeper, is off the board. Josh Allen
above Kyler Murray. People not high on Murray in this draft. I like it because I'm not a Murray guy.
I don't think anybody is.
So if we go from our rank and we bring this back to the expert preseason ranks, right now we're looking at Allen Robinson, Terry McLaurin, Keenan Allen, CeeDee Lamb, David Montgomery, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, George Kittle, which people may be picking from those. In our rank based on league settings, right now everybody at the top is quarterbacks, where you can see kind of the skewed nature of this, having Jalen Hurts as our 10th best QB in the league based on the ability to obtain some of that rushing, the 800 rush yards here, which kind of bumps him way up the list above a guy like Tom Brady or even a Matt Stafford or Joe Burrow. again, our rank here, we have running back set up, quite frankly. We do have a small group of tight ends that we were looking at potentially in 4, 5, or 6, somewhere in there if they're around. Seeing when Kittle came off the board, when Pitts came off the board, we wanted to keep our eyes on some of these other quarterback options in the event that Lamar did not get picked by us. And then we also had some wide receivers, kind of that top field of our wide receiver class that we'd be thinking about after those running backs were gone. Following that, we went back to our running back position to make sure that we were able to fill that position accordingly. We'd like to have probably 5 running backs here. It's a 15-team positional slots. You have a defensive kicker, so 13 positional players, tight end, wide receiver, quarterback, and running back. Looking at potentially 2, maybe 3 quarterbacks, 5 wide receivers. Probably going to go with 1 tight end and 3 or 4 wide receivers. Coming off the board, Montgomery, McLaurin, and Keenan Allen. So nobody that was really getting our taste buds too activated.
And Beefcake took a QB, so let's see if he adds to the Aaron Jones brigade at the running back position.
Gonna go back to Dr. Beefcake. You take a look here. So he could go running back. He could go wide receiver. He could go tight end. He might go Pitts. He is a little bit crazy in the head. To me, I'd be looking at that running back and then that flex position here. To me, I think ideally we would always be having 3 running backs to account for bye weeks. That's why we're thinking 4 to 5 running backs on the roster.
And the hope for me at this point is to get Josh Jacobs.
With 3 to go, I like our chances here. The other one you're looking at here is Damien Harris. Dan and I have had some kind of heated conversations about Damien Harris. They do have him projected at 1,287 yards, which to me is a little bit high in my opinion here with the way that New England always seems to rotate everybody. But the other part is with the pass game, he has been non-existent part of that pass game.
And can you go to running backs real quickly? Let me just take a look at the entire slate that we got.
I'm going to go to the official rankings here based on our league settings. So to me, I would take these guys right out of the question here. I wouldn't really reach for Swift or Henderson. We look at this, and based on our league rankings, the guys we're looking at are around 90, which I think is a bad job by Yahoo projections.
Well, they're not valuing the running back position.
If we change this from last year's stats, we had Josh Jacobs is by far the best player on the board available at the running back position.
I think you got to take him.
I'm going to go back to all of our players here. And I'm going to go back to our ranks here. And I think the thought here is Josh Jacobs. I think the part that surprised me a little is Kyler Murray. So in that 3rd round, we might have been able to wait, but I don't think it was worth the risk based on the guys that have come off the board here. The pick that we would have had would either have been maybe a Chris Carson at that point. The other guy I did like was Justin Jefferson, but based on the wide receivers, I don't think that was really a need. Josh Jacobs has been added to TD Live fantasy football roster.
And we got 3 1,000-yard rushers from a year ago.
4. 3, and then we have a rookie. Yeah. So I do pencil Najee Harris in for 1,000 yards. Yep.
I was actually considering Najee 1,000-yard guy because he was in college, but Zeke came out to 979 last year.
Oh, that's just a sham. That's a laughable sham.
He's going to have a big year this year. He still had 52 catches. He was dealing with a lot of garbage at the quarterback position.
People might think we're crazy here. We still have not taken a wide receiver. We will be pounding running back again with our next selection at 44. My personal thought here is going to be Myles Gaskin. I think that these numbers are completely ridiculous. I might say we wait one more round on Gaskin and go with Sanders this round or Harris. But out of those 3 guys,
Sanders off the board. Swift off the board.
So to me, it might be pound Gaskin now. I think that he will be an integral part of that team, that run game, and that receiving game.
I might have to go Harris over Gaskin. I think Harris gets the goal line work. I could be wrong. I'm just a little afraid Malcolm Brown comes in and vultures a couple TDs.
I almost think it would be we're able to get both of those guys on our roster, and trying to think about this in terms of how these are appearing in other people's lists. Based on our league rankings, neither one of them are even visible yet. Based on the expert rankings, they would be coming into play around this time.
Take a look at the wide receivers real quickly, just so I can get a feel for what's out there.
Well, to me, a lot of guys that are very similar here. To go Robert Woods at 43 and have a Cortland Sutton available 6 rounds later, to me, doesn't really make too much sense.
No, I agree. Still good depth.
I'm honestly here thinking it might be pull a Kyler Murray pick.
I wouldn't. I would go with Harris, I think. Tough call, but
I'm between Harris and Gaskin.
I think Harris is pretty damn good.
Okay, the half-point PPR. I think Harris is going to be there for our next round pick. I'm going to go Gaskin at this point.
I think Harris goes before Gaskin.
We'll take Harris. We'll listen to Dan here. We'll go. We're looking to get both of them on the roster here.
My apologies, but I do think Gaskin will be there, and I think Harris is going to be the focal point of this offense.
The part that scares me with Harris is third down, any passing downs, he's coming off the field for James White. So that is my hesitation there. He is at the bottom of the barrel in this New England Patriots passing offense. You have J.J. Taylor, who will be part of that offense as well as a receiving back. And then with Harris, I think some of that will get shared with Stevenson, but we'll see. Well, hopefully we'll be able to grab both of them here.
No, exactly, because it's handcuffing somebody else too, even taking another back projected for well over 1,000 yards. Right now we're eating up the running back market.
Kyle Pitts coming off the board.
Take a look at our team here.
So from our side here, we've already started filling up that bench with running backs. NFL, you never know who's going to get hurt. It's a 17-week schedule. To me, this is a contingency plan. Being able to plan for buys, being able to plan for matchups. We want to be able to run 3 solid running backs out there each and every week. Right now, we're heading into the 6th round. We're going to be looking to fill that backup quarterback position in round 8 with Tom Brady. And we're going to be looking at filling up the wide receiver position with maybe 4 total wide receivers. We will be looking at Mike Thomas a little bit earlier than some would think. Thinking of when he comes back, he will be their number 1 option down there in New Orleans. And to deal with the first 4 weeks when we have him come back, that's a top 3 round pick for most of these teams.
We have Cooper Kupp coming off the board.
Both the Rams wideouts here in the last 4 picks.
Kyler Murray off the board.
Kyler Murray going to Ryan's Rad team. Let's take a look at Ryan's Rad team. We got Eckler, James Robinson, Travis Kelce, George Kittle. It really surprised me there that he went Kittle after going Kelce.
He knows that Kelce can be like a big-time wideout, and then he gets another solid tight end in the process.
And as we talked about handcuffing the market, this might be a team that we're looking to make a deal with a little bit later on in the year. Go back and look at some of these other teams. The McCaffrey, Edwards, and Sanders, not a bad running back trio. A.J. Brown, Chris Godwin. Still haven't filled in that quarterback position. Amari Cooper, Dalvin Cook, Joe Mixon, DeAndre Swift, and Darren Waller at the tight end position. Metcalf, Evans, Henry, Gibson, and Woods. Not a huge fan of this team at all. I do like some of the players, but I'm not necessarily feeling what they're trying to put together. Very touchdown dependent roster. DeAndre Hopkins, Jordan Jefferson, Alvin Kamara, Kyle Pitts, and CeeDee Lamb. Potential,
Really good in the wideouts.
but
and he's putting a lot of production into guys that he could have gotten late rounds a year ago, which is what we're looking to do with the rookie receiver class, where we can get a lot of value on young players that aren't being drafted where they should be.
Seeing Hawk come off the board here at 49 is a shock, in my opinion. The fourth tight end off the board.
Julio Jones.
Cooper Kupp, Aaron Jones. I think Dr. Beefcake here is going to be looking to add another running back. To fill up your wide receiver positions here and have a wide receiver at the flex before filling up the running back position, to me, is a horrible mistake. Pretty nice duet here with Nick Chubb and Saquon Barkley. That worked out pretty well for him, being able to have Saquon fall to that second-round selection at 13. Could have gone the other way and been happy with that. Saquon in the first and Chubb in the second. So two very good backs on this roster. But we did talk about a little bit about Saquon's injury concerns. The first real full team here, we have Dak, DeAndre Adams, Devonta Adams, Terry McLaurin, Taylor Carson, and Hawk. I would be looking to fill up that wide receiver flex position before going to the tight end position here. Very deep tight end class where after the third tight end, 4 to 15 could be anybody. And the fantasy team, Allen, Hill, Diggs, Montgomery, Andrews, and Jones. A lot of tight ends taken already, which is very shocking to me. People panicking to get 100 points on the year.
I want my tight end.
Bill Belichick style. Chase Edmonds coming off the board here at 54. Mike Davis at 55. Shane standout team picking ahead of us here. I wouldn't be surprised to see Russell Wilson come off the board here.
Let's see if Shane thinks Russ is a standout.
Unless Shane was, I think Shane was the one that had taken the 2 tight ends, if I remember correctly. Nope. So Shane could go running back. He could go quarterback, or he could look to that bench. With how he's drafted, I wouldn't be shocked to see Shane take another wide receiver here. He seems to be in love with these guys. Wow. A little bit of a reach there to me.
Javonte Williams is a good player.
We're going to be taking Gaskin with this pick, and that should really fill out our running back room for the time being. And then we will be looking at coming back maybe later rounds if there's somebody that we do like that has fallen. But when we look at our team here and we look at that depth, we have 3 fantastic options every week. We have 2 buys in week 7, 2 buys in week 14. That gives us three solid running backs each and every week with the ability to go play the waiver wire market. And in round 7 here, we've talked a little bit about Tom Brady, potentially round 7 or round 8. I think this begins that discussion, Dan. Is this the time to go with Brady where we're looking at him potentially as 50, 55 touchdowns based on that schedule and the scheduling between him and Lamar? There might be some weeks where we choose to play Brady over Lamar. Is this too early, or do we want to wait for that second pick in our snake here? So we have 64 and then 77.
Let's take a look at the wide receiver position real quickly.
So this is based on the league rankings here. based on points per ours. And let me go ahead to go to our projected stats from Yahoo on this calendar year.
Trey Sermon off the board. Wow.
So to me, looking at these wide receivers, I don't necessarily see one where I sit here and go goo goo gaga over. I think ultimately a lot of the same here. Deontay Johnson coming off the board, Adam Thielen coming off the board, and a lot of these teams are already 2 or 3 deep on the wide receiver position. Taking a look at the positional grid here, we have the wide receiver spot. We have 3, 3, 3, 2, 2, 2, 2. So us and Ryan's Rad team are the only teams that have not taken a wide receiver at this point.
And Aaron Rodgers is off the board. We have 30 seconds. Let's make.
We have 4 teams without a quarterback position. I think we go Brady here, and we don't allow the teams that are sitting waiting, hoping for Brady to fall. What are your thoughts? 20 seconds.
Yeah, you could go Brady. Russell Wilson has good value as well. Will really handcuff a team with his rushing. Tom Brady.
I know you might not be thrilled with the pick, but ultimately here we have the 2 best quarterbacks in the league, in my opinion. Best passing quarterback, the best rushing quarterback. And when we said, ladies and gentlemen, we will find wide receivers deep, we meant it. We weren't just blowing smoke. We have 3 bench positions filled up. A team of 15, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We have 3 additional bench positions to fill. 2 wide receivers, a tight end, a defense, and a kicker. With our next pick here, we're going to be looking at back-to-back wide receiver picks starting in round 8 and 9. The goal here would be to come away with Jerry Jeudy as our first pick. I'm going to go ahead and cue him up. And as our second pick would be Michael Thomas. And obviously, Michael Thomas will be hurt to start the year. We're looking at him having big-time value later in the season.
And can you go to the wide receivers? Yeah, I'd say Corey Davis has very good value as well. He's going to be the feature of that offense.
I'm very high on Laviska Shenault Jr. This is a player that I do like. We'll see how he fits in, but a little high to take him right now. But when we look at him, Jacoby Myers, Jamar Chase, Antonio Brown, Tyler Boyd, these guys are all potential to go for 1,000 yards here, where they're jumping up to get a wideout with 1,300 yards in round 3. I just don't see it, ladies and gentlemen.
Jeudy off the board.
That's a little bit disappointing there.
I'd probably queue up T. Higgins as well.
And then a little trick here for those new. If we come over to this queue, it will show us our players in queue, just for those who may be new. While we got the time here, are there any other running backs that we'd like to take a look at here to throw up into that queue? I know one we had talked about was Michael Carter, potentially a little bit later. Sony Michel a little bit later. But right now, I don't think any of these guys would really, without something happening, really play over the stable that we have. One of the best stables in fantasy football history, if I do say so myself.
Best backs of all time.
I'm patting myself on the back here. I think we've had a fantastic draft. When we go back to this board, Ezekiel Elliott, Najee Harris, Josh Jacobs, Damien Harris, Myles Gaskin. We got 3 Alabama running backs, Dan, and Alabama creates some great products coming out there.
Jacobs and Harris were teammates, and I actually liked Harris better. I think Harris is a moose out there. Goes downhill, has a little bit of hip movement, but seems to find the open field a lot for the big back.
So I cannot commit to taking a wideout who's hurt as our first wide receiver choice. With Judy coming off the board, and you see Higgins coming off the board here, the hope would be that Corey Davis is there at 77.
Absolutely.
You see here the projections, they're putting him close to 1,300 yards. Zach Wilson, we've been tough on the kid. We've been tough. If you listen to TD Live, it's been a tough go for him. But he will be throwing the ball downfield, ladies and gentlemen. And Corey Davis will be getting deep targets, so we will take advantage of that.
100%.
A team that will be playing from behind, a team that will be not afraid to take chances.
Do you believe in magic?
Ultimately here, if we can get Michael Thomas coming back at 84, Michael Thomas was routinely taken in the first round of last year's drafts. With Jameis Winston, I have no hesitations about that passing game. If it was Taysom Hill, I'd feel a little bit differently. But ultimately here, I think Thomas would be a big-time hit at pick 84. This 934 yards, I'm not sure how they're projecting that. I would assume that's going to be in 10 games, 11 games, something like that, where they're looking at 85 yards a week in those projections.
I'd be looking at Antonio Brown soon, too.
The other piece we were looking at around 11 to 12, 10, 11, 12, somewhere in there for a defense. We had 2 or 3 defenses that we like. If they're gone, we will not be taking defense till maybe week 1 of the regular season. We may just take talent today. With a guy like Michael Thomas on the PUP, we will be able to move him to IR and add an additional player. So that's something that's up in the air. We'll see how it looks when we get there. With 1 pick before us, I would like to see Corey Davis fall to pick 77. How do you feel, Dan?
I think Corey Davis is a great person to acquire. He was highly paid this offseason, clearly the number 1 target in that offense. He's going to be getting balls amongst balls coming his way, and he's looked fantastic in camp and preseason as well.
This is another guy, Kenny Gallaudet. What has happened to him over the last couple of years? Seeing James Conner go with the pick before us to Shane's standout team. I know we're on the clock here. I think we have a pretty good idea. With James Conner, Javonte Williams, I'm not really sold. With Kyle Pitts, CeeDee Lamb, I think this is a team that's going to get beat on, ladies and gentlemen.
Absolutely.
Poor Shane. Corey Davis is the selection, ladies and gentlemen. Let's see what they have to say about him. 4 of 6 targets, 70 yards. I don't even think he played a half.
Targeted on 10 out of his 13 routes that he's played in the preseason.
Corey Davis is on the team. I know Dan's been giving me some pushback about the Michael Thomas pick here coming up. What's Dan's thoughts here? Is there another guy you'd like to see go over Michael Thomas here and potentially wait for him?
Antonio Brown and Deebo Samuel, but it's up to you.
I think where I'm looking here and seeing the wideouts taken on these teams, I think a guy like Antonio Brown is going to continue to fall. I think
I think he'll be gone real soon. He's had the best. He's been the best receiver in Bucs camp. He's been one of the only guys that hasn't had the drops. I think he and Brady absolutely love each other. I could see Antonio catching 100 balls.
Better chance to be there at 97.
I think people are weary about Michael Thomas, but I could be wrong. He's had personality clashes, waited on his surgery, but it's up to you. You know, you can make this one. I got the Damien Harris pick. That Bucs offense is extremely explosive.
I do agree with that, but at the same time, I think that's a team. I'll go Antonio. I love Antonio. I think he did a great job up here in New England. I was disappointed when they moved on from him. I was happy he reunited with Brady. We're bringing him in. This is a guy that had 1,700 yards a couple of years ago. A
And
great.
2 Bucks go back to back, Fournette and Antonio Brown.
Michael Thomas goes with the next pick to Shane's standout team.
Oh, my apologies on that one, but I think Brown is a very good player, and I think Peyton and Thomas have clashed a lot personality-wise, and I wouldn't be surprised if Thomas gets moved. They like Marquez Callaway, and last year in 8 games, obviously, he worked himself into the offense, but Antonio Brown, 45 catches, 483 yards, 4 touchdowns. I have to think that he's going to get back to his old pace. He used to get 135 balls a season. I think this guy hasn't lost any speed or anything like that. I think you could see him absolutely torching people because they really can't double him. They have Godwin, they have Gronk. I expect big things out of Antonio Brown and the entire Bucs offense.
So at this point, we're looking at a tight end to fill up the team. Outside the tight end spot here, we do not have a tight end. I don't think we're going to be looking to get a tight end. I think
I was going to say, let's look at the receiver position if you wanted.
Yep. No, I was going to stay at that wide receiver position. I think it's going to be somebody here with some good upside, some high value upside. The other thought here would be going into round 10. We did talk about a potential defense here where defenses do score points. And we had 3 on our radar: Tampa, Baltimore, and Pittsburgh.
And we saw what Tampa Bay can do, but we'll probably wait on that just a little bit. And hopefully we can get another receiver here that we think is capable of at least 1,000 yards.
So we have 97 and 104.
See, this is what I thought would happen. Callaway from New Orleans off the board. So you have 2 New Orleans Saints coming off like that, and I just don't know if they're going to have that much success as a team. I know Winston is a very
I would have taken
time thrower.
Callaway myself. I would think Sutton. I'm not sure.
I mean, another guy I like late, Terrace Marshall for the Panthers, has looked great in my opinion.
The other guy that I was thinking about here was going to be Devonta Smith, where I think he will be a number 1 down in Philly.
Absolutely.
Where I think for him, it might make sense here as a 10th rounder to bring him in. Where it's somebody, I think Philly's defense isn't necessarily the best. I think they're going to be playing from behind. I think he's going to have a great chance to be that wide receiver 1 right from the get-go. And there he goes off at 90. Disappointing.
Very disappointing. Couple guys that we've liked a lot coming off the board here. But I even think a guy like Cole Beasley is capable of 1,000. T.Y. Hilton is extremely capable still. Like I said, I like Terrace Marshall a lot. He's really had a great preseason. Elijah Moore, they're just going to be throwing the ball. They've got him projected for 1,000 yards.
I think it's a little bit high for Elijah Moore at this point when you have some of these guys here. I did talk a lot about Chenault. I do think he's great. I think Pittman is going to have a big year here. I think Cooks is really one of the only options they have down there. We still have a Debo. If Debo is there at 97, Debo will be on TD Live.
Absolutely. Debo is an absolute freak of nature, projected for 207 fantasy points. That looks very good to me. Gus the Bus is off the board.
Going to College Fund 1. Let's take a look. As we hammered running back after running back, a team like this team is looking at Zach Moss and Gus Edwards as kind of their rotational backs with a Kareem Hunt, who's really a number 2 in my opinion. I think that's not necessarily the strongest core. I do like Jonathan Taylor a lot. They did hit a home run on that pick.
Absolutely.
And always interested, what has Beefcake done?
I love taking a look over at what Beefcake is doing up.
I can't think this was his plan coming in. If it was, I'd be. He might be a little excited that he's got Pat Mahomes. That might be it.
His best pick, in my opinion, was probably Cooper Kupp. But he's got Kupp and Higbee. He's really invested in that Rams offense.
Jamal Williams coming off here at 94, 3 to go with Debo. And if we do go to these draft results and look at this wide receiver position, again, we're on the back end here. Ryan is going to already has picked, so I would be kind of surprised to see any more wide receivers come off. I do expect Debo to be on TD Live.
I'm really hoping that turns out that way.
No defense is off the board at this point. I might be looking at Debo and then come back with a defense. I think that Tampa defense or that Pittsburgh defense has the potential to score a lot of points. Beef is on the clock.
He's bringing the beef, baby.
In our queue from earlier, we had Michael Carter and Sony Michel, who may be considered later. And there goes Michael Carter to Dr. Beef. Cake.
The king of beef. And now Shane is looking for his latest standout, and it's
Sony Michel, both back-to-back. Our queue goes away. I'm glad I pointed it out right before it happened. We did say Debo Samuel will be our pick here. The fact that he was able to fall is a thrill. He did experience a glute issue. I have no concerns. I think him and Ayuk will be great. The concern I have is Yahoo only projected him for 1,000 yards. Quit being disrespectful to the man.
Debo is going to have a big year.
And that's as a third wide receiver. If we go back to our draft results and take a look at our team, we already do have Antonio Brown and Corey Davis. Adding Debo Samuel to that is not a necessity. He will be a rotational player. His bye week is week 6, so that could potentially be an issue where we will be looking to probably bring in one more wide receiver here, not having a bye week of week 6. I'm not overly concerned about that. Week 6 is a month and a half away.
Portland, Sutton.
So I believe we have round 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15. I believe we have 5 picks to go. Defense and a kicker, as well as a tight end are our only needs. I think this might be the time to either take a look at that defense. I know it might sound crazy, but I think that defense might be a nice piece here to score some points. Getting to play against Sam Darnold, getting to play against the Atlanta Falcons, just in general, a lot of sacks. You'd expect a lot of sacks. And then also the New Orleans Saints with Jameis Winston, who could be turnover prone. So for defenses in fantasy, you look at sacks, interceptions, and the big one here is touchdowns. If they can put one in, that's where things turn to points real quick. We were looking at the Washington Redskins as a potential option as well. A lot of interest in them with that stellar defensive line.
And as much as I like Baltimore and Pittsburgh, they do play such a tough schedule, being in the same division as well as having the Browns. So I do think that the Bucs are probably the best pick at that position.
So here we could look at Michael Gallup. We are on the clock. Michael Gallup as a fourth wide receiver. I still think there's a lot of depth in the wide receiver market, and I think that a lot of these teams have already filled up their wide receiver slots. The other position here would be tight end, where I think there's still some good options on the board here where I don't necessarily think it's a need to go this round.
Yeah, I'd go get it defensive. I'd take probably the Bucks. I mean, the Bucks can really coach their teams. They got playmakers.
They added pass rush through the draft. Tyron. They got a big-time secondary. All those kids getting 1 year older, 1 year more experienced. And I think the division has taken kind of a step backwards as a whole. I'm very happy with that pick. As far as the kicker position goes, I'm not worried about the kicker position. I don't think there's any worry about the kicker position. I think here in our next pick, we're either looking at a tight end or best available. We have talked about potentially Deshaun Watson or Justin Fields late. We do have two quarterbacks. The thought here is that would be a handcuff to other teams in the league. So, Dan, I'm not sure if you have a thought on taking a third QB here. Not necessarily. I would think Watson in the 12th. I would think Fields probably in the 14th if we're going to go that route. I do not have a problem if we think Watson will be playing this year, pulling the trigger there, because that is playing a great defensive approach against these other teams. If he's not playing for us on our bench, he's not scoring points against us for another team.
Sports Illustrated 19 minutes ago, one team emerges as favorite for Deshaun Watson, trade likely in coming days.
Deshaun Watson will be our next pick.
I wouldn't take him just yet. It looks like the Dolphins.
124.
Looks like the Dolphins will be taking Watson, so your call on that one.
You don't trade as part of that package. No. I can't see them bringing in Watson without giving away Tua.
The Texans asking for a combined 5 first and second round draft picks in return.
So they would keep Tua on the Dolphins to do what with the two of them? I'm just not sure of that situation.
No, I'm thinking Tua has to be involved. And Ramondre Stevenson off the board.
Which is, to me, a pretty good shock here. We got the fantasy team, which are they really hurting for backs is the question. David Montgomery, Raheem Mostert, Ronald Jones, and Ramondre Stevenson. So, yes.
Not a very good running back room.
You got Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs, and Julio Jones, good receiver room, but I'm not sure they have that much upside over what we would have at these two positions with our running back being a flex. Chuba Hubbard coming off the board here, college one. Potentially, that might be a handcuff, maybe?
It is, because we've seen Alexander Madison come off the board as well, handcuffing some of these primetime backs. Pollard also had gotten taken.
So we have 3 picks left, I believe, maybe 4 picks. Out of our 4 picks here, we do need one tight end and potentially a kicker. I might take the kicker in the 15th just to see what our Yahoo draft grade is. Always like to see where those come out to. We still do not have teams with quarterbacks, which makes me think that they're sitting here.
Take a look at what QBs are available. Odd that Trey Lance comes off the board.
Pretty much pick of the litter.
And we're on the board. Can you take a look at running backs real quickly? Yeah, nobody.
I think that I think we go Watson here, come back with a tight end, a wide receiver, and a kicker. Or do you want to go different order? I think Watson here, I'm fine with that. If he doesn't play, it's a 12th round pick down the pie hole. I'm not upset. If he does play, we just got ourselves a great trade asset.
Absolutely. Could potentially be an MVP candidate if
With the wide receiver board here, we still have guys looking to get 1,000 yards easy. A DJ Chark, a Laviska Shenault. There's still a great set of talent. Justin Fields.
Myers go yet?
So Justin Fields came off the 2 picks after Deshaun Watson, which to me, I think we got great value in that pick.
Tannehill off the board. So somebody that was probably looking to get Watson there, and we get him right before they go ahead and scoop him up.
And I think that was exactly my thinking here, was that was one of those teams waiting, and that is their starting quarterback. They came back with their next pick with Ryan Tannehill. I think they were absolutely looking to get Watson.
I'm going to see if I can find anything out as I research.
So we are on the board here. To me, we have a wide receiver, a tight end. I'm going to go ahead and pull the trigger here on Rob Gronkowski.
Let me take a look at a couple tight ends real quick, if you don't mind scrolling up. And let me check one other thing.
We have about 30 seconds on the clock here. The other one we had discussions about was Irv Smith Jr.
And Gesicki.
And, yep, Mike Gesicki. We also did talk about Pat Freiermuth, who...
that's the only thing that's tough. Patty's a beast out there, but I'm fine taking Gronk. Goddard's also good.
You know, as a lifelong Gronk guy, Gronk spike.
We got Brady and Gronk, Tampa's D, Antonio Brown. Dallas Goedert comes right off the board after him.
Well, we don't need to play him each and every week here, but we do have some options down there in Tampa, and if they're rolling to 52-0 wins, baby, we got some options there with Brady, Gronk, and Brown. The one that does get penciled in here is Gronkowski. We do have other options for Antonio. We do have other options for Tom. What I would like to see here with our final 2 picks in 14 and 15, 15, we will be taking a kicker. Round 14, we're looking for a wide receiver here to kind of finish out that complement and give us those 4 wide receivers to go with Corey Davis, Antonio Brown, and Deebo Samuel.
As you can see with our strategy, the running back room is completely dried up as there's multiple 1,000-yard receivers still available.
For those of you that may have waited on the running back here, one of the guys we did talk about that have big potential this year is going to be Phillip Lindsey. From our side, we're not probably going to take him here just because doesn't necessarily, it's not a need based on the guys we're able to get, but that's a guy to keep on late.
Lindsey's still available? I thought he was off the board.
He might be off the board. Just in general here for those that might have missed. He looks like he is off the board.
Yeah, I think he got taken because he's a good ball player. Funny seeing Mark Ingram get drafted.
Right here, Beefcake.
Beefcake getting it done.
I do like Shenault. Shenault is off the board. So one of the guys that we did like. Curtis Samuel was a guy that we also talked about here with big upside. With Ryan Fitzpatrick coming in. Another guy that we talked about was Jacoby Myers, where he could potentially be the Patriots' #1. I don't care what they brought in. I think he is their best weapon in the pass game. Michael Pittman, a second-year wideout in Indy, still has a lot of upside. We got Elijah Moore here. Probably won't go more because we already have Davis, but that's another guy that could potentially be a good fit. Cole Beasley here is a 1,000-yard guy. There's still so much talent on the wide receiver board. I can't justify taking some of these guys that we saw go in the first couple rounds. If we go to show drafted and we go up to the top here by rank, you're talking 300-yard difference between a Justin Jefferson at 1341 and a Jacoby Myers at 1126. And you're talking a 13-round difference for 200 yards. Now they're penciling in more touchdowns for one of them. But at a certain point, if you're getting 1,100 yards, you're going to be stumbling into the end zone a couple times.
Yeah, and I like Jarvis Landry as well.
He's been nothing but consistent 100 balls a year for pretty much every year of his career. Coming out of LSU, yeah, he's been big time.
You know, and you get a guy in the NFL top 100 here in round 14. I don't think that's too bad of an investment.
Seeing Bateman come off the board here at 130 above Landry is kind of baffling to me. Not necessarily a bad pick at 130, but you just sit there and you think about some of these wide receivers in the rooms. You're kind of thinking at that point with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt and Odell Beckham and Austin Hooper. Landry's a guy that's going to be in single coverage. He's going to be winning a lot, and they're going to be moving the ball. So unless you're sitting here thinking that he's going to be kind of ahead, playing from ahead, and in a lot of run situations late in games, that's where you might want to shy away. But see what they got for projected touchdowns. Nelson Aguilar leading the way, which I do not really agree with. But
no, I don't either.
Marquise Brown, big play, Hollywood Brown. I'm almost leaning Michael Pittman here. We'll see what's on the board when we get there.
Yeah, Pittman, the only thing that concerns me with him is the 7th rounder, Michael Strawn out of Charleston. Probably outplayed him in camp. Pittman didn't look the best in preseason, but you never know.
Yeah. Some of that, too, with what they've had. I realize 2 backup quarterbacks, both fighting. But some of those connections might be a little bit more developed with some of those kids that did go through the rookie mini camps together.
Just tough because T.Y. Hilton, I think, is still available too, and T.Y.'s pretty consistent as well.
Right there at 113 on our middle ranking. And essentially, all of these guys will become free agents, so it's not to say we won't have access to them. These guys will all be hitting the waiver wire, which is one of the reasons that we sat here and said we will be waiting on wide receivers. There are so many good options here when you're looking at round 14 and guys not making teams here that are going to be 1,000-yard wide receivers. Every guy on the board right now is projected to get 1,000 yards. So I guess this goes to preference, Dan. What's the preference?
I just think at this point, we should be looking at what offenses we think are going to be the best. So who's going to have the most touchdowns based on being in scoring positions?
So I kind of lean towards Pittman here just based on that run game. I think you're going to have to really commit to that Indianapolis run game. And I think that could go for Hilton, too. I think we'll have
the Browns are going to have an explosion, though.
That's one where Stefanski kind of pushes me away. He's been so hyper sensitive to get Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb those goal line touches.
Who are you going with?
We'll let the computer decide. Just kidding. We're going to take Michael Pittman. Making a call here. Going the big body. Jonathan Taylor, I think, is going to be really commanding that run game. I think that's going to give Pittman a nice opportunity there to get some favorable matchups down the field. And still plenty of guys that we like here. Jacoby Myers, Curtis Samuel. If something doesn't work out with one of the guys that we have taken at the wide receiver position, that will be easy to fix. Plenty of guys to go fill in, matchup based, whatever it may be. We're going to stay with you at the conclusion of the show here until we receive the email with our grade. We'd like to see what our ranking is from the Yahoo grade. You guys can take a look at how the strategy went.
And who's Tom coming around with that kicker?
Nick Folk's my guy here. I don't think the Patriots can put the ball in the end zone. Just kidding. I believe Joey Sly was cut today. Was that the news?
Yeah, Joey Sly's out. Tucker was taken, or?
I believe so. I might go big leg Daniel Carlson.
Yeah.
Really crapshoot here. You know, I'm really going to scrutinize over this one. Probably going to cut our kicker 6 or 7 times during the course of the year. I'm taking Nick Folk. It's a Nick Folk world.
It is Nick Folk's world. And that's all, folks.
6 picks left, and this draft has concluded.
It ended with Nick Folks.
You're not doing a podcast?
We're on the podcast. So the team here that we have, Lamar Jackson, Tom Brady, and Deshaun Watson at the quarterback position. Corey Davis, Antonio Brown, Deebo Samuel, and Michael Pittman Jr. at the wide receiver position.
And don't be upset, folks. We have Deshaun Watson, who has already signed up to do charity work for TD Live. He's trying to fix his image already here as he joins the team.
At the running back position, Ezekiel Elliott, Najee Harris, Damien Harris, and Myles Gaskin. At the tight end position, Rob Gronkowski. Nick Folk in Tampa Bay as our specialist, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to be getting that email from Yahoo any minute here with the conclusion of the draft, and it will give us a grade. We'll see what they think of the TD Live inaugural fantasy football team. I think these other teams should be shaking in their boots, though. That's all I have to say.
Especially Beefcake.
I don't think Beefcake did very well. If we go look at Dr. Beefcake's team, big-time running backs, Aaron Jones, Mike Davis, Michael Carter, David Johnson, Mark Ingram, Tevin Coleman. He just pounded one after the next when he realized that his team was in trouble.
Yeah, he did, because all those guys are terrible. The Houston Texans will be lucky to win 3 games this year, and he's got 2 running backs from an offense that will be sputtering out consistently. I just don't get the game plan on that team.
So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to stop the screen share. I'm going to bring this back up in a minute or two. I'm just going to move over to bring up the league here and see if we can get the league grades, which should be in my, I believe, my team. So it doesn't look like we have anything yet. We do have the full report here for the draft. The draft results, maybe under draft analysis here. Nope, doesn't look like I gotta think it might be my email would be the other thought here.
I think it takes a couple minutes for it to put everything together.
I was able to see our mock draft report card when Dan and I had gone through a mock draft. We had made the mistake of not taking a kicker or defense and did score a 78. We were projected third without 2 positions filled. So that was a pretty good pre-draft. How do you feel about it, Dan? How do you feel about the draft? This was surprising to me here with Taylor and Barkley moving to the second round for some of these guys.
Yeah, it would have been nice to have gotten one of those guys in the second round.
I would have been fine with pick 9 or 10 would have been beautiful.
But I'm more than happy getting Najee Harris in the second round. I think, the Zeke pick, Zeke has upside to be the number 1 back in the entire league for a couple years in a row. Before CMC exploded, you were pretty much taking Zeke at number 1 or 2 in every draft. So getting him a little bit lower, they have Dak Prescott back, a very explosive offense. He lost 15 pounds. He's as light as he's ever been at the pro level, back to the weight he was at as a freshman in college. So he obviously took it personally, coughing up a lot of fumbles a year ago and having the Cowboys somewhat embarrassed without their team leader. I think Zeke is ready to come out strong this year. So I think getting those 2 backs, 1 and 2, was fantastic. And then coming back around, taking Lamar Jackson, that's the guy I really was hoping that we could get. And to go ahead and bring him in, I think, is just a fantastic addition to the team.
So seeing what went here, I'm not overly concerned that we did go Lamar at the 24th selection rather than try to wait for him here where we got Jacobs. I would have been fine taking Jacobs at this selection and getting Lamar the next round. So either way, I'm perfectly okay with that. In between here, the difference would have been a Josh Jacobs or a Chris Carson. Who would we have taken over those 2 would have been our selection. That would have been the player that we were taking if we did move up. We were going running back at that spot. We had the pick of the litter there with Jacobs. Here, coming back with Damien Harris, and then coming back with Myles Gaskin. I think ultimately here, this top 6 rounds, I'm very happy with how this went. This was pretty much textbook by the plan, what we were looking to accomplish.
But I think Dr. Beefcake wishes he had the draft that we just had. Because based on the running backs we have versus his, it's night and day.
You're looking at Kyle Pitts in round 5, and you're looking at Rob Gronkowski in round 13. A kid who's never stepped foot on an NFL field versus a guy you're penciling in for probably 800 yards. So
the guy that just had 2 touchdowns in the Super Bowl.
It might be some upside there with Pitts, but you're going Pitts over established NFL talent, even TJ Hawkinson. Brandon Ayuk. Another one here, Brandon Ayuk going in the 6th round, where we were able to come back much later for Deebo Samuel, where I'm looking here in round 10, pick 7 for Deebo, whereas you had Ayuk going in round 6. So over 4-round difference there for, to me, 2 very similar players.
Absolutely. Still, the free agents that you could sign at the wide receiver position are all bringing in 1,000 yards, whereas you're lucky to get a running back there that's capable of 400.
The other part here is there will be trades available. You can trade in fantasy. I think when we look at some of these teams, we'll be patient here, see what comes to us. But essentially, if we go look at that week 1 matchup, who do we got? I hope we got beef. Oh, Chad's cool team. Who they got? Chad's cool team picked ahead of us. And when we're looking at Chad's cool team, the tight end position, and they have Kittle easily destroying Josh Jacobs, which I'm not sure I agree with here.
Well, take a look at the bench and let's see what they have projections for as far as what we could rotate in there.
Pretty much everybody that they're giving us is a 10, 11, 12, which is right in that same area here. I'm just not necessarily sure I agree that Gallaudet is a better fantasy option than Antonio Brown.
I don't.
I'm not sure where this hype's coming from. He had a good preseason game against the defense. But are we looking at him getting 80 yards and a touchdown, or 50 yards and a touchdown every week, or not even sure what this comes out to? 80 yards on 5 catches. I just don't see it. I don't
They
see
have,
it.
they have him as an absolute force, and they also have Austin Eckler outperforming Ezekiel Elliott.
Against one of the top defenses in the league with the Redskins. Here we got Zeke against Tampa, which should be a higher scoring game. I can see Tampa only scoring 6 points, but essentially here, if any types of turnovers, and we can also look to potentially add another defense if we do make a move. So I'm not overly concerned about that. If we do see Watson get traded, I wouldn't be surprised if we're looking at some trades come in for Deshaun as a third quarterback, and I would not be opposed to moving him. But looking at this, they don't. I don't think we're going to have a very strong grade based on what their player projections are. Seeing some of these guys, it's a half-point PPR. Again, you're projecting T. Higgins for 80 yards and 6 catches against Chicago. I'm really not sure that these are consistent with what the projections reach out to. In the past, we've gone through the Yahoo, and based on their weekly projections, we can see guys going for much more than they are projected for. So we never really take what they say for too much value. So to show what I mean here, if we go through this, they would have Lamar Jackson for 239 pass yards. If we went through all the Baltimore Raven wide receiver options, there'd be 400 yards worth of receiving based off of how Yahoo does it. So you got
It is unbelievable.
Take it with a grain of salt.
And all I was seeing on those projections is Lamar Jackson being severely undervalued.
55 yards rushing and a half a touchdown, 239 passing against a Raiders team where I would expect much more, probably 100 on the ground, 260 in the air, 3 or 4 touchdowns. That's a defense that hasn't had a pass rush in about 6 years. So that's it. I still haven't seen any email come in. Might extend over a minute or two more, or we might read off with the next TD Live special showing the email and what they expect from us.
Let's take a look at Football 21 and see if they have any grade at this point.
This one. A little bit interesting here, a little bit different score. Before, Chad was projected for much more than the 107.
Yeah, so I think they're working on it. Thus, not a final grade, but I think they were listening in and heard our critique about every receiver being chalked up to 10 to 12. And he switched Jalen Hurts in there, and now he's losing.
Oh, he's got Kelsey on the bench now.
And Eckler and Murray.
Which, yep. So we'll see. We'll see what he comes out with. But
well, it's interesting to see Chase Edmonds is projected for more than Josh Jacobs.
Well, it's what you get. It's what you get. Not even sure that's based off of matchups. I just think that's the general sentiment that they got here because he's 11 points a week.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, man. They really don't like Josh Jacobs this year. This was a guy that went in first rounds of drafts a year ago.
A better fantasy option is Marquez Callaway than Josh, which we'll come back to that one. Put that one on paper. We'll see what everybody says at the end of the year about those two.
I'm pretty sure I know what they'll be saying. Who's Marcus Callaway? And wow, Josh Jacobs is very good. There's a reason he went in the first round. And in the NFL Top 100 and other news, Patrick Mahomes ranks number 1 and Tom Brady ranks number 7. So it was clear to me that the best player in the NFL last season, we saw it in the Super Bowl, was definitely Patrick Mahomes. as we saw him frantically running around the field like a chicken with his head cut off, doing absolutely nothing, as Tom Brady beautifully orchestrated 3 touchdown passes in the very first half to put that game on ice and win his 7th title.
Looking at a team with Tannehill and Justin Fields as their quarterback options.
Well, I was also laughing. They have Alexander Madison, keep going down. Gio Bernard and Rashad Penny.
We're, again, not. You go look at Madison here. They got him at 5 points a game. That's 50 yards a game. Where you got Jacobs going for 100 yards a game. Or 100 yards worth of points a game. You got Gio Bernard going for 7 a week, which, again, what are we looking at? 50 yards on 4 catches? But Josh Jacobs is only getting, I don't even know how to calculate this. I have no idea what the thought is. They put the decimal touchdowns just screw with everything.
Yeah, it does.
You don't get a decimal touchdown. You got a touchdown or you don't.
Yeah, they average it out very oddly. I've never really listened to what their ranking systems are. In fact, the only time I got an A+ was one of the times I didn't win the league, which was last year. So very odd behavior on their behalf as far as how they average everything out.
We all love these Yahoo emails, but they're just slacking. They're slacking big time.
Yeah, I would think it would be either under overview or the draft tab, where it might say like draft grades, but I'm just not seeing anything.
Yeah, the draft tab had a mock draft grade.
Oh, go to draft grades.
It is up. They're still not done here.
Ah. Ladies and gentlemen, the moment you've all been waiting for.
I wouldn't be surprised if we got a D, B, A. I have no idea where they're coming at. You really never know what you're going to get from these guys. That's what makes it fun.
What did they have for Zeke as his average pick?
$5.5. We have 17.8. Uh, 40.1.
What was Lamar?
41.5. And that's the top 50. But not all leagues are made up the same, and that's why it's hard with any of these types of things, because if we go to our league settings here and we come down to points, as far as quarterbacks go, passing touchdowns are 4, which a guy like a Baker Mayfield, he needs 45 touchdowns to compete. You can't compete with 30 touchdowns. You're just you're losing 4, 6, 8, 10 points a week on these passing TDs versus these rushing TDs. So this is where we were looking at Lamar Jackson as those rushing touchdowns. being a 1,000-yard rusher is over 100 points. Having 10 rush touchdowns is an additional 60 points. 60 points of rushing touchdowns of 10 is worth 15 additional passing touchdowns. So it really does add up quite significantly.
Absolutely.
And take you through a little on the defense here. Based on the amount of points you allow, depends on your first set of scoring here. So 10, 7, 4, 1, 0. Over 28 points, you begin to get negative points, up to a -4. For the sack, interception, fumble recovery, you do get points, 1 per sack, 2 per turnover. A touchdown is 6, a safety or a block kick is each worth 2. Your kickoff and punt returns do count as defense special teams, and those are worth 6 points. So you can see here a half point per reception, which does play towards the receivers or the receiving running backs to add up to some points from that side of it. But overall here, we were looking at this as one of the main drivers for our draft. The thought behind Tom Brady was he has the potential to go for 50-plus touchdowns, which is the type of pocket quarterback that you need to be able to offset that rushing. In the event it's a dogfight, Lamar Jackson will be in. In the event that Brady's playing lesser competition, where we do expect a big day, like the Lions game last year, where he had 405 touchdowns at half and sat out, he would be playing in those types of weeks.
And that could be every week. Because
we could also cut our kicker here and find 2 guys from the IR. Cut the kicker, add the IR spot, move him to the IR. Cut the kicker, add the IR spot, fill up these, and then go back and bring back in Nick Folk. So that'll be something we could take a look at to see if there's any players worth bringing in here. On the IR, we would wait until they do clear the waivers on August 31st, so we do not waste a waiver spot for that. But we should be able to, not sure if they allow the filter for that, but I believe they used to have a filter for IR positions. And in that case, you would just want to bring them in to be able to have the rights for them when they do get healthy. And what a job by Webster last year. -2 points.
He's a keeper. He and Kendall Hinton. Really thought Kendall Hinton looked good last year.
It's incredible that he was starting as a quarterback and finished the year with -points.
And that's why he is no longer a starting quarterback.
Might have to get the free trial here to unlock our team's positional strengths. We are at a C-, ladies and gentlemen. They have given us a C-.
Let's take a look at the reaches.
Best pick. TD Live scores a nice late-round bargain in selecting Rob Gronkowski with the 4th pick in the 13th round, about 14 slots later than his average draft position of 110. So basically what they're basing this on is who was picked where in the grade, which I'm not a big fan of going that route. But
no, because we didn't value the receivers that we'll get the points at, which is fine because I do this every year and always win games. It's important to get the best running back.
We were the last manager in the league to draft a wide receiver and tight end, Corey Davis and Rob Gronkowski, which was the plan coming in. With a strength of schedule ranked as the most difficult based on projected records. Have a tough path, but that doesn't mean you're destined to lose. The strength of schedule doesn't say anything about how involved you are. It just talks about how Yahoo projects random guys to do. We have the oldest group in the NFL, league average of 6.4 years of experience, prioritized age before beauty. Even so, one rookie, Najee Harris, and in total there were 13 rookies selected over the course of this draft.
Well, Tom Brady plays a major factor in that age group.
Yeah, well, I think we were able to take all guys who were proven because we hammered out running backs that were quality up front and weren't taking flyers on random running backs late in the draft. Which is funny to me that we're behind at the quarterback position. Which I'm not sure how we're behind in the quarterback position here. I don't understand that one bit. And this is where we're getting killed on, is the QB spot. Pretty much everything else we're ahead at running back, pretty much even with wide receiver. A little bit behind in tight end.
Yet they told us tight end was our best pick.
So I'm not sure how having Lamar and Brady puts us at a 70-point deficit. Or the average projected points. This has got to be because Deshaun Watson's a 0. So if we cut Watson, this would go way up, and we'd be better in pretty much everything, with the exception of tight end and wide receiver by a fraction.
And the hope is that if Watson is ineligible to play, he'll be put on IR, and we can put him on IR, or he hopefully gets traded and he does play.
Absolutely. And I have no problem sitting there at IR the whole year on a 13th round pick. Taking a look at the fantasy team and their report card here. Substantially worse across the board than we were, but they have much better quarterback numbers here. And I think they only have one quarterback. So I think this is because Josh Allen is their only quarterback, so those numbers are all inflated. So the Yahoo best draft has big-time wide receivers, low running backs, with David Montgomery, Raheem Mostert, Ronald Jones, and Ramondre Stevenson leading the best draft in our league, which really makes me question Yahoo's system for tabulating results.
No, you're absolutely right. They have running backs that might not even be starters in Raheem Mostert, who should be splitting time with Trey Sermon, Ronald Jones, who should be splitting time with Fournette and Gio Bernard, Ramondre Stevenson, who will be a backup to Damien Harris, and James White. Very interesting, the grading system here.
They have big-time projections on these wide receivers for Hill, Diggs, and Jones, really carrying the team. With Tyreek Hill going here for almost 20 points a week, they have him in Christian McCaffrey territory, who will be going for close to, I want to say, 2,400 yards total on the year. So if I go to, rather than all available players, let's do all players. We're going to go ahead and filter this.
Ladies and gentlemen, J.K. Dobbins is being carted off to the locker room.
That Gus Edwards pick ain't looking so bad anymore.
The J.K. Dobbins one is. Not too good.
So when we go to the week 1 projections here, seeing Christian McCaffrey at 24, they're looking at him having 80 rush yards, 60 receiving yards, on pace for, 142 yards over a 17-game season.
And Lamar Jackson did get in and out of tonight's game healthy. He went 3 of 4, 29 yards, and Not You gotta love the O rank. One at 29, one at 53, one at 49 when they're 1, 2, and 4.
What are you looking at here?
The offensive rank and then the actual rank.
Yeah.
It just does not correlate, sir.
No, not at all. Because the whole top 10 is quarterbacks based on how they do it here, and they're all running little runners. The fact that you have Brady as the 11th best quarterback here, projected for 316 yards and 2 touchdown passes is what kills him here because of the lack of rushing. They have Stafford 1, Brady and Mahomes tied for 2 in total yardage, where I do not look at Mahomes and Brady as a huge rushing difference here. You see 0.2 touchdowns and 0.4 interceptions as the difference, which to me is nuts. Brady is not more likely to throw twice as likely to throw a pick than Mahomes. He might be less likely to get the pick taken away if he throws it, but when we look at this here, this 5-point difference is based off of a 0.2 rushing touchdown, where they're giving him a full 1.2 points for the touchdown, this rushing TD. They're giving him 1.8 points for the rush yards. They're giving him 0.6 points for the touchdown, and Brady's getting 0.5 minus for the interception. So this is where we talk about these numbers really not making any type of sense at all. 316 exact yards, and then they just go with these random fractions that make no sense because neither one of these guys is getting 2.5 or 2.3. They're getting 2 or 3.
Gotta love Yahoo. Very bright.
And then when we look at rushing yards here, Lamar is second on the list here behind Jalen Hurts, where I'm not really sure about that one either. Where we had Lamar finishing the year last year with over 1,000 rush yards. And some of that might be attributed to Atlanta. But if we go to week 2 projections, not against Atlanta, we're going to see more of the same, where we got Lamar going up in this week to 64. So at least they do have it a little bit staggered here, where Hurts would be going down against San Francisco. So there is some logic, but everybody with 0.4 rushing touchdowns, really, it's either just they get it or they don't. Tom Brady leading the way week 2, 322 yards. Again, if this goes the way they're looking at it over 17 games at 0.8, they got Brady throwing, 15 picks? When was the last time we saw Tom Brady throw 15, 16 picks? I don't know.
I don't think ever.
I remember years with 3. The most likely quarterback to throw an interception would be Jameis Winston at 1.4, followed by Carson Wentz at 1.3, and Ryan Fitzpatrick at 1.2, which is just kind of funny here. 3 gunslingers, or 2 gunslingers and Carson Wentz.
Well, as soon as you trade for Carson Wentz, you're wondering why you traded for Carson Wentz. Then you're trying to find reasons that he can't be on the field so you don't pay the first-round price as opposed to the second-round price.
Again, looking at total fantasy points here, week 2. Lamar Jackson, top 3 performance, going against Kansas City in what should be a pretty good offensive game. Tom Brady, further down the list without the rushing, 2 touchdowns. If he does come in against Atlanta and go for 350 and 5 touchdowns, he will be the number 1 quarterback on the board, ladies and gentlemen. And this may be a week where we do take Tom Brady against the Falcons.
Absolutely. He'll be absolutely torching him, much like he did last year when he hit Antonio Brown for the game-winning Super Bowl.
I did click on trade suggestions. It looks like we got to pay for that. I'd like to see what their suggestions are, but probably would never listen to them based off what we've seen here from their ability.
You get 7 days free.
I think that 7 days would make me stupider.
You're right.
So that is the first annual TD Live Fantasy Draft. I'm Tom. That is Dan. We hope you learned something, had a good time. We'll keep you week-to-week updates here, 15, 20-minute show on our weekly plan for who's playing and the previous weekly recap.
Good fight.
Good night. TD Live. TD Live.
TD
TD Live.